George Washington Carver was a Missouri-born scientist and educator who became one of the most influential agricultural researchers in American history. George Washington Carver, botanist, inventor, and teacher, was born into slavery in Diamond, Missouri, around 1864, though the exact date remains uncertain. He came from the most humble of beginnings. He had a gentle demeanor and a profound curiosity about the natural world. Carver's early years were marked by hardship and an insatiable desire for knowledge. His mother Mary was enslaved by Moses Carver, a German-American immigrant farmer. When George was still an infant, he and his mother were kidnapped by Confederate raiders during the chaos of the Civil War. Moses Carver hired a man to track them down, but only the infant George was recovered. His mother was never seen again. This traumatic separation would shape Carver's life, leaving him without family but with a fierce independence and determination. After slavery was abolished, Moses and Susan Carver raised George and his older brother Jim as their own children. George was a sickly child, suffering from whooping cough that left him with a weak constitution and a high-pitched voice. His frailty meant he could not perform heavy farm labor, so he was assigned household tasks and helping with the garden. It was in Susan Carver's garden that young George first developed his fascination with plants. He spent hours observing how things grew, experimenting with different soils and conditions. Neighbors began calling him the plant doctor because he could diagnose and cure sick plants. George's thirst for knowledge was insatiable. He wanted to attend school, but the local school for white children would not accept a black student. When he was about 12 years old, he left the Carver farm to attend a school for black children in Neosho, Missouri, about 8 miles away. He traveled alone, with no money and no guarantee of success. In Neosho, he found lodging with a black couple, Andrew and Mariah Watkins, doing chores in exchange for a place to sleep. He attended the Lincoln School for Colored Children, quickly mastering everything his teachers could offer. Carver's education became a nomadic quest. He moved from town to town throughout Kansas and Missouri, working odd jobs to support himself while attending whatever schools would accept him. He worked as a farmhand, a cook, a launderer, and a homesteader. He lived in sod houses and boarding houses, always alone, always moving toward more education. In 1885, he was accepted to Highland College in Kansas, but when he arrived, the administrators saw that he was black and revoked his admission. The rejection was devastating, but Carver persisted. For several years after the Highland College rejection, Carver homesteaded in Kansas, proving up a claim and establishing a small farm. He continued to study plants informally, collecting specimens and conducting experiments. He also developed his artistic talents, particularly in painting and drawing. His botanical illustrations were remarkably detailed and beautiful, combining scientific precision with artistic sensitivity. In 1890, at the age of about 26, Carver gained admission to Simpson College in Indianola, Iowa. He was the first black student at the institution. He initially studied art and piano, and his paintings showed considerable talent. However, his art teacher, Etta Bird, recognized that a black man would face enormous obstacles in pursuing an art career. She encouraged him to focus on botany, where his knowledge and passion could lead to a practical profession. Her father, Joseph Bird, was a horticulture professor at Iowa State Agricultural College, and she helped arrange Carver's transfer there. In 1891, Carver enrolled at Iowa State Agricultural College in Ames, becoming the first black student at that institution as well. Despite facing discrimination and being required to eat in the basement rather than with white students, Carver excelled academically. He studied botany, chemistry, and agriculture, working with some of the leading agricultural scientists of the day. His professors quickly recognized his exceptional abilities, particularly in plant pathology and mycology, the study of fungi. Carver earned his bachelor's degree in 1894 and was immediately asked to stay for graduate studies. While pursuing his master's degree, Carver taught freshman biology classes and managed the greenhouse, becoming the first black faculty member at Iowa State. His research focused on plant diseases and fungal infections. He built an extensive collection of plant specimens and fungal samples. His work was so impressive that his professors expected him to pursue a career in research at a major university or with the Department of Agriculture. In 1896, Carver completed his master's degree in agriculture and bacterial botany. His thesis research on plant fungi was published in scientific journals, establishing him as a serious researcher. He seemed destined for a conventional academic career in the North, where racial barriers, while still present, were less rigid than in the South. However, in April 1896, Carver received a letter that would change his life and the course of agricultural history in the American South. Booker T. Washington, the prominent black educator and founder of Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute in Alabama, wrote to Carver offering him a position. Washington was building Tuskegee into a premier institution for black education, focusing on practical skills and self-sufficiency. He needed someone to run the agricultural program, and he had heard of Carver's exceptional abilities. The offer was tempting but challenging. Tuskegee was in the heart of the Deep South, where Jim Crow laws enforced strict racial segregation and violence against black people was common. The position would pay far less than Carver could earn elsewhere. The facilities would be primitive compared to Iowa State. Yet Washington's vision of uplifting black farmers and students appealed to Carver's sense of mission. After much deliberation, Carver accepted the position. Carver arrived at Tuskegee Institute in October 1896. He was shocked by the conditions. The agricultural program had virtually no equipment, no laboratory, and no budget. The soil was exhausted from decades of cotton monoculture. The students were poorly prepared, many barely literate. It would have been easy to become discouraged, but Carver saw opportunity. He immediately set about building a laboratory from scratch, using discarded bottles, jars, and equipment he scavenged from trash heaps. He taught his students to make their own equipment and supplies. This resourcefulness became a hallmark of his teaching method. Carver's mission at Tuskegee was to help poor black farmers in the South improve their lives through better agricultural practices. The region's economy was dominated by cotton, which depleted the soil of nutrients. Farmers, especially black sharecroppers, were trapped in cycles of poverty and debt. Carver understood that the key to breaking this cycle was diversification and soil improvement. He began promoting crop rotation, particularly the planting of legumes like peanuts and sweet potatoes, which restored nitrogen to the soil. These crops could break the cotton cycle while providing food and potential income. However, convincing farmers to change their practices was difficult. Cotton was king in the South, and generations of farmers knew only cotton cultivation. To reach farmers directly, Carver developed the Jessup Agricultural Wagon, a mobile classroom that traveled to rural areas. The wagon, essentially a horse-drawn laboratory and demonstration unit, brought agricultural education directly to farmers who could not come to Tuskegee. Carver and his students would visit farms, analyze soil, demonstrate new techniques, and distribute bulletins explaining improved methods. This extension work was revolutionary for its time and became a model for agricultural outreach programs across the country. Carver's most famous work involved the peanut, though this focus came later in his career. Initially, he promoted peanut simply as a rotation crop to improve soil. The problem was that there was little market for peanuts beyond limited uses as animal feed, roasted snacks, and peanut butter. If farmers grew peanuts, they needed ways to sell them. This challenge led Carver into his most creative period of research. He began experimenting with peanuts in his laboratory, seeking new uses for the crop. Over the years, he developed hundreds of peanut-based products, including dyes, paints, plastics, gasoline, nitroglycerine, soap, ink, cosmetics, medicines, and various foods. Many of these products were not commercially viable or were not actually invented by Carver first, but his demonstration showed the versatility of the peanut and helped create demand for the crop. Carver applied the same approach to sweet potatoes, developing over 100 products from that crop as well. He created synthetic rubber from sweet potatoes and demonstrated numerous food products. His work with these crops helped diversify Southern agriculture and provided alternatives to cotton dependency. The agricultural innovations Carver promoted did help improve conditions for many farmers, though the systemic problems of Southern agriculture, particularly the sharecropping system, required more than better farming techniques to solve. Carver's teaching style was distinctive and effective. He emphasized observation, experimentation, and working with what was available. He took students on long walks through the woods, teaching them to observe nature closely and learn from it. He encouraged them to experiment and think creatively. Many of his students went on to become teachers and agricultural agents themselves, spreading his methods throughout the South. His bulletin publications, written in simple language and distributed free, reached thousands of farmers who never attended Tuskegee. These bulletins covered topics from crop rotation to soil improvement to food preparation, providing practical knowledge that farmers could immediately apply. Despite his contributions, Carver's relationship with Tuskegee was sometimes strained. Booker T. Washington, while respecting Carver's abilities, grew frustrated with his disorganization and his reluctance to focus on practical administrative tasks. Carver was a researcher and teacher, not an administrator. He neglected paperwork, missed meetings, and clashed with colleagues over resources and authority. After Washington's death in 1915, tensions continued with his successor, Robert Russell Moton. However, Carver's growing fame made him increasingly valuable to Tuskegee as a symbol of black achievement. Carver's national reputation grew significantly in the 1920s. In 1921, he was invited to testify before the House Ways and Means Committee regarding a proposed tariff on imported peanuts. He was initially given 10 minutes to speak, but so impressed the committee with his demonstrations and knowledge that they extended his time repeatedly. His testimony, which showcased his peanut products and his wit, received national press coverage. The shy professor became a celebrity, the Peanut Man, whose story of rising from slavery to scientific achievement embodied American ideals of self-improvement. The publicity brought Carver both opportunities and burdens. He received invitations to speak across the country and was sought out by reporters, students, and curiosity seekers. Major figures visited Tuskegee to meet him, including Henry Ford, who became a friend and admirer. Ford shared Carver's interest in finding industrial uses for agricultural products and funded a nutritional laboratory at Tuskegee. Despite offers of much higher-paying positions elsewhere, Carver remained at Tuskegee, living simply in a dormitory room and devoting himself to his work. Carver's fame also brought criticism and controversy. Some scientists questioned whether his product developments were truly original or practical. Many of his inventions were demonstrations of possibilities rather than commercially viable products. He rarely patented his discoveries, making it difficult to establish priority for his innovations. Some accused him of being more showman than scientist, though this criticism often came from those who did not understand his mission. Carver was not trying to build a career in industrial chemistry. He was trying to help poor farmers and demonstrate the capabilities of black scientists. Throughout his life, Carver maintained a deep spiritual connection to nature. He was a devout Christian who saw his scientific work as revealing God's design. He often spoke of communing with nature in the early morning hours, learning directly from plants and from God. This mystical approach to science puzzled some colleagues but was central to Carver's worldview. He believed that nature held solutions to human problems and that careful observation and experimentation could reveal these solutions. His faith sustained him through loneliness, discrimination, and professional frustrations. Carver never married and had few close personal relationships. He lived an ascetic life, accumulating almost no possessions beyond his plant specimens, art supplies, and rocks and minerals he collected. He dressed simply, often in worn suits, and lived in a small room at Tuskegee for decades. His emotional life remained somewhat mysterious. He formed intense but apparently platonic friendships with several younger men over the years, relationships that provided companionship but also sometimes ended in disappointment. His loneliness was profound, yet he channeled it into his work and his connection with nature. As Carver aged, he became increasingly recognized as a symbol of black achievement and interracial cooperation. In the segregated South, he was one of the few black men who could move somewhat freely across racial lines. White audiences invited him to speak, and white scientists sought his advice. However, this status came with constraints. He had to be careful not to challenge segregation too directly or to appear threatening to white supremacy. He advocated for black advancement through education and economic development rather than through direct confrontation of Jim Crow laws. This accommodationist approach, similar to Booker T. Washington's philosophy, drew criticism from more militant black leaders, but it allowed Carver to continue his work and reach audiences he otherwise could not have reached. During the Great Depression, Carver's message of self-sufficiency and making do with available resources resonated strongly. His demonstrations of creating useful products from common crops and his emphasis on diversified farming offered hope to struggling farmers. He continued teaching and conducting research well into his 70s, though his health was declining. In 1937, he used his life savings to establish the George Washington Carver Foundation at Tuskegee to continue agricultural research. The foundation ensured that his work would continue after his death. Carver received numerous honors in his later years. He was awarded the Spingarn Medal from the NAACP in 1923. In 1939, he received the Roosevelt Medal for his contributions to Southern agriculture. In 1941, Time magazine featured him on its cover. These recognitions, while gratifying, came late in life. For decades, Carver had labored in relative obscurity, known primarily in agricultural circles and among black educators. On January 5, 1943, George Washington Carver died at Tuskegee Institute from complications of anemia. He was approximately 78 years old. He died in the same institution where he had spent 47 years of his life, in the small room that had been his home for decades. His funeral was attended by thousands, and he was buried on the Tuskegee campus near Booker T. Washington. In death, as in life, Carver was celebrated as a symbol of what could be achieved through education, hard work, and dedication. Carver's legacy is complex and multifaceted. He made genuine contributions to agricultural science, particularly in promoting crop rotation, soil conservation, and alternative crops. His extension work and educational bulletins helped thousands of farmers improve their practices. His research into plant-based products, while not always resulting in commercial applications, demonstrated the potential of agricultural chemistry. Perhaps most importantly, he served as an inspiration and role model, showing that Black Americans could achieve excellence in science despite enormous obstacles. However, Carver's reputation has also been subject to myth-making and exaggeration. He did not invent peanut butter, as is often claimed. Many of the products he developed from peanuts and sweet potatoes were not original to him or were not practical for commercial production. His scientific publications were relatively few compared to his fame. Some historians argue that his actual scientific contributions have been overstated while his real achievements in education and agricultural extension have been underappreciated. Modern assessments of Carver recognize both his genuine accomplishments and the limitations of his work. He was a talented botanist and skilled teacher who dedicated his life to helping poor farmers and advancing black education. He operated within the constraints of his time, working in a segregated society with limited resources. His greatest achievement may have been demonstrating that black scientists could contribute to American progress, helping to break down racial barriers in science and education. In 1943, shortly after his death, Congress designated January 5 as George Washington Carver Recognition Day. In 1951, his birthplace in Missouri became the George Washington Carver National Monument, the first national monument dedicated to a Black American and the first to honor someone other than a president. These honors reflected Carver's status as a national symbol, though the real man was more complicated than the symbol suggested. George Washington Carver represents a particular type of American figure, the self-made man who overcame impossible odds through determination and talent. His story of rising from slavery to scientific achievement embodied American ideals while also exposing American contradictions. He achieved fame and recognition yet lived under segregation and discrimination. He was celebrated as proof that Black Americans could succeed yet was constrained by the very system that celebrated him. His legacy includes both his actual contributions to agriculture and education and his symbolic role in American culture. He is remembered today primarily for peanuts and sweet potatoes, which is perhaps reductive, but his genuine service to farmers and students and his pioneering role as a black scientist deserve recognition. Carver was, in the end, a dedicated teacher and researcher who used his gifts to serve others, working within an unjust system to create opportunities for those who came after him.